The grand hall of the Galactic Assembly was filled with voices, laughter, and cold metallic echoes. Hundreds of alien species had gathered to watch what they called the War Games, an annual contest where fleets from across the stars displayed their power. This year was different because, for the first time, Earth had been invited to join. The invitation was not given out of respect but out of mockery. To the galaxy, humanity was still young, still fragile, and still too small to matter. The delegates from powerful empires leaned back in their seats, confident that the humans would embarrass themselves in front of billions of watching eyes. From the first moment Earth's fleet appeared on the screen, the hall shook with laughter. The human ships looked smaller compared to the gleaming titans of alien armadas. Their hulls were plain gray, their weapons limited, and their designs simple. A reptilian general with scales like polished stone leaned forward and hissed into the amplifier, his words broadcast across the assembly. Is this Earth's mighty fleet? They bring cargo haulers to a war game. Do they hope to win with mining shuttles? His statement drew another wave of cruel laughter. A tall insectoid admiral tapped her mandibles together in amusement. Perhaps they came to beg for mercy, she added, her clicking voice carrying across the chamber. Or perhaps they came to learn how real civilizations fight. The humans in the gallery did not reply. Their faces remained calm, their eyes steady. But the laughter only grew louder at their silence. On the giant display at the center of the hall, alien fleets began to show off their strength. Vast cruisers unfolded wings of energy, dreadnoughts spread fire across the void, and swarms of hunter drones moved like storms of steel. Every shot, every maneuver, was broadcast live across the galaxy. The humans only watched, their small fleet still drifting at the edge of the system, quiet and still. To many, this silence was proof of weakness. A young alien commentator spoke for the crowd, his voice high with excitement. Viewers, what you see now is history. Earth, the primitive rock, finally dares to test its fragile fleet against true empires. But look at their ships. No carriers. No dreadnoughts. Only old cruisers painted gray. Tell me, what chance do they have? The audience roared with approval. Bets were placed instantly. Entire sectors gambled not on whether Earth would lose, but on how quickly they would be destroyed. The humans still said nothing. Their commander stood aboard the flagship, a tall man with a steady voice. His officers looked at him nervously, but he gave only one order. Hold position. Wait. The alien fleets grew restless. They wanted a show, a fight, something to entertain the crowds. Instead, the humans only waited. The silence began to feel strange. Then, without warning, the stars behind Earth's fleet shifted. At first, the crowd thought it was an error in the projection. A shadow stretched across the system, blotting out a cluster of stars. Gasps filled the chamber as sensors picked up something massive. Slow and deliberate, a new shape entered the battlefield. It was larger than anything the humans had shown before. Its outline was sharp, angular, and dark as midnight. Impossible, muttered the insectoid admiral, her mandibles pausing mid-click. Humans do not build ships of that size. But the scanners confirmed it. A single vessel, dwarfing the human fleet, glided forward. Its hull gleamed black with faint silver lines that pulsed like veins. Rows of sealed hangar bays stretched across its sides, each large enough to hold a cruiser. The aliens fell silent for the first time that day. The human commander's voice echoed calmly across the channels. This is the Terran supercarrier Leviathan, responding to the invitation. He spoke without pride, without boasting, as if announcing something ordinary. Yet his words fell like thunder. The assembly hall, once filled with laughter, now felt heavy with unease. The delegates shifted in their seats, their eyes fixed on the monstrous ship that kept moving forward. Some alien admirals tried to laugh again, forcing the sound into the air, but the tension was clear. "Size means nothing," a reptilian general hissed. "It is a shell. Big, but empty. The humans only built it to frighten children." His words carried no laughter this time. Even he sounded unsure. The Leviathan came to a halt beside Earth's smaller fleet. Its engines burned with silent blue light. For a moment, nothing happened. The battlefield was quiet except for the nervous whispers of the alien crews. Billions of viewers across the galaxy leaned closer to their screens, waiting to see if the giant ship would move, speak, or strike. Inside the hall, the silence became heavier than steel. The aliens who had mocked Earth minutes ago now watched with narrowed eyes. They had expected clumsy ships, weak weapons, and a quick defeat. Instead, they were staring at something new, something unknown, something Earth had hidden. No one could tell what the Leviathan carried inside, but one thought began to creep through the minds of those who had left. Perhaps they had made a mistake. The alien fleets floated in formation, their weapons charged, their crews restless. The battlefield, once filled with laughter and cruel words, had fallen into an uneasy silence. All eyes were locked on the massive human vessel that had entered without warning. The Terran supercarrier Leviathan was like a dark mountain drifting across the stars, its sheer size dwarfing every ship around it. The alien admirals whispered to each other in private channels, their voices carrying fear they did not want the humans to hear. They had mocked Earth, but now they could not explain what stood before them. On the galactic broadcast, commentators struggled to keep their voices steady. One of them, a young avian with bright feathers, tried to joke, though his voice cracked. "Well, this is unexpected. The humans have brought a large ship. Very large. But size is not strength, dear viewers. Perhaps it is nothing more than an empty shell." His attempt at humor fell flat. Billions of eyes watched as the carrier slowly turned, its shadow passing over the smaller human fleet. An insectoid admiral finally broke the silence on the main channel. Her clicking voice was sharp, filled with forced confidence. "Earth, you play at war. Do not think a single oversized vessel will save you. Withdraw before you are humiliated. This is your only chance." She expected cheers of agreement from the assembly, but none came. The other admirals stared at the Leviathan, measuring it, studying it, failing to understand it. A calm voice answered from the Leviathan's bridge. The human commander spoke without raising his tone, without showing anger or pride. "You called us here. You asked us to show what we have. So we will. But do not ask us to leave. We will not." His words were simple, but the way he spoke them carried weight. The aliens exchanged glances, unsettled. This was not the voice of a desperate commander. It was the voice of someone who already knew how the battle would end. The alien fleets began to maneuver. Cruisers spread out, dreadnoughts adjusted their positions, and swarms of fighters formed attack lines. The crowd in the assembly regained some of its voice, whispering that perhaps the humans had only built a large, slow-moving target. Some even laughed again, though their laughter was thin. "Big, but empty," one reptilian general repeated to himself, almost like a prayer. Still, the Leviathan did not move. It did not raise its weapons. Its sealed hangars remained dark, silent, waiting. The smaller human fleet kept formation beside it, offering no challenge, no taunt. This patience made the aliens uneasy. In war games, fleets usually showed their strength quickly, firing weapons to impress the crowd. The humans did nothing. They let the silence grow, and with every passing minute, the unease deepened. One impatient alien admiral, his armor gleaming like liquid gold, opened fire. A warning volley of plasma bolts streaked across space and struck the Leviathan's shields. The impact flashed bright enough to light up the system. When the glow faded, the carrier remained untouched. Its shields had not flickered, not even once. The Golden Admiral snarled. "See, they hide behind energy walls. But they cannot hide for long." His words were transmitted across the galaxy, but he spoke them more for his own pride than for others. The other fleets watched carefully, unsure. If the Leviathan could endure such fire without reply, what else could it do? Still, the human commander said nothing. He gave no order to strike back. He only stood in silence, watching the alien fleets grow restless. The stillness was maddening to the admirals, who prided themselves on speed, on power, on domination. The humans' refusal to play their game began to feel like an insult. Finally, the insectoid admiral demanded answers. Her mandibles clicked hard enough to echo in the assembly. "Human commander, what is inside that shell? What do you think you are hiding from the galaxy? Show us what you carry, or admit you came only to scare children." The human commander raised his hand on the bridge and gave a single order. His voice was quiet, but the crew obeyed instantly. Across the Leviathan's hull, rows of sealed hangar doors began to tremble. One by one, they unlocked, releasing faint streams of light. The galaxy held its breath as the enormous doors started to open. From the assembly hall to the smallest viewing screen on distant colonies, every watcher leaned forward. The laughter was gone. The bets were forgotten. What had seemed like a game now felt like the edge of something far greater. Billions waited to see what the humans had hidden in their silence, what the massive carrier would finally reveal. The doors continued to open, slow and steady, like the jaws of a beast. But nothing emerged yet. The darkness inside the hangars seemed endless. The aliens whispered nervously, their claws tapping, their tails twitching, their voices low. For the first time since the war games began, it was not the humans who looked weak. It was the galaxy that looked uncertain. The silence across the battlefield was heavier than steel. Every alien fleet hung in place, their weapons ready but unused, their crews waiting in nervous anticipation. The massive hangar doors of the Leviathan finished opening, exposing the endless dark inside. For a long moment, nothing came out. The galaxy stared into the abyss, wondering if the humans had staged nothing more than an empty trick. Whispers filled the assembly hall, some nervous, some mocking. "It is hollow," muttered a scale general, his forked tongue flicking in doubt. "They built a floating coffin to frighten us." A wave of nervous laughter followed, but even that laughter sounded thin. Then the dark inside the hangars moved. First, faint lights flickered, like distant stars being born. A low hum echoed across the sensors, rising higher, louder, until even alien ships felt the vibration through their hulls. Out of the darkness came the first wave, sleek shapes, hundreds of them, their engines glowing with blue fire. They shot forward in tight formation, cutting through space like blades. Alien officers leaned forward, their eyes wide. These were not cargo shuttles, nor primitive fighters. They were fast, disciplined, and they flew like predators. More followed. Thousands of smaller craft poured out of the Leviathan in organized waves, swarming around the supercarrier like living armor. They moved with frightening precision, each turning in perfect coordination, as though they shared one mind. Behind them came heavier machines, ships with jagged armor and silent weapons that gleamed with strange energy. To the galaxy, human technology had always been simple, behind the times, lacking elegance. But what came out of the Leviathan did not look backward. It looked new, unknown, and dangerous. A commentator's voice cracked over the broadcast. "Viewers, we are witnessing something unexpected. The humans have unleashed a swarm. This is no empty shell. This is no trick." His voice shook, failing to find the words. The insectoid admiral slammed her claws against the console, rage and fear mixing in her clicks. "Destroy them now. Show the galaxy what becomes of children who play war." At her order, a line of alien cruisers advanced, their cannons firing streams of plasma. The swarm of human craft broke formation, scattering in all directions. But it was not panic. It was strategy. The first volley passed harmlessly through empty space, hitting nothing. Then the swarm turned. The alien cruisers were fast, but the human fighters were faster. They closed the distance in seconds, weaving through the larger ships with movements too sharp, too unpredictable for automated defenses to track. They struck not with long volleys, but with precise blows. A single cruiser screamed as its engines were ripped apart by concentrated fire. Another was swarmed, its shield overloaded as dozens of fighters struck in unison. One after another, proud alien ships that had crushed enemies for centuries began to falter. The assembly hall erupted in shouts. Some delegates screamed that it was impossible. Others shouted at their fleets to pull back, to regroup, to crush the humans before it was too late. But no one could deny what they saw. The Leviathan was not a shell. It was a fortress, a factory, a world of war. Among the fleets, panic began to spread. Admirals barked orders, but their crews were shaken by the speed and ferocity of the human assault. One officer's voice cracked as he reported, "They fight like predators, Admiral. Not like machines, not like drones. They are hunting us." The insectoid admiral refused to believe it. She demanded her dreadnought fire a full salvo at the Leviathan itself. The great ship obeyed, launching a storm of energy across the void. Explosions rippled across the Leviathan's shields, bright enough to blind. For a heartbeat, some in the assembly dared to hope. But when the light faded, the Leviathan still stood. Its shields glowed faintly, but the massive vessel did not move, did not flinch, did not even return fire. Only the swarm continued its merciless hunt, tearing apart alien cruisers piece by piece. The human commander's voice finally echoed across the channel, calm and steady. "You wanted to test us. This is only the beginning." A shiver ran through the assembly. Billions of viewers leaned closer to their screens. What else was inside the Leviathan? If the first wave could do this, what would the second bring? The battlefield had become a storm of fire and steel. Alien cruisers burned one after another, their wreckage drifting silently in space as the human swarm circled like vultures around fallen prey. The Leviathan itself remained still, a silent mountain in the void, its hangars still not empty. The first wave of fighters had been enough to shake the galaxy, but the human commander's eyes were fixed forward, calm and unblinking. He had not yet revealed everything. The insectoid admiral screeched across the command channel, her mandibles clashing in fury. "Form the line. Bring the dreadnoughts forward. Crush them before they spread further." The massive alien warships moved into position, their engines flaring with power. Each dreadnought was a beast of war, weapons layered on every surface, shields reinforced to withstand entire campaigns. They had destroyed civilizations, broken rebellions, and ended wars. To the galaxy, dreadnoughts were not ships. They were nightmares forged in metal. The assembly hall erupted in renewed confidence. Delegates leaned forward, eager to see humanity humbled once more. "Now we shall see the truth," hissed a scale general. "Fighters may swarm, but they cannot pierce a dreadnought." His words calmed many who had begun to doubt. Billions of viewers watched as the dreadnoughts raised their weapons, their hulls glowing with deadly energy. Then the humans moved. The swarm scattered in wide arcs, leaving the dreadnoughts alone in the center. At first, the aliens thought it was fear, a retreat. Cheers filled the assembly as they saw the fighters turn away. But then the swarm folded back in, regrouping into tight formations that dove toward the massive ships from every angle. They did not rush blindly. They moved with precision, as if each fighter knew its exact role in the attack. The first dreadnought fired. Beams of plasma cut across space, vaporizing dozens of fighters in a single sweep. Alien admirals hissed in satisfaction, but their pride was short-lived. The fighters split, surrounding the dreadnought from above and below, striking at its joints, its exposed thrusters, its shield generators. Each hit was small, but hundreds of hits landed within seconds. The dreadnought's shield flickered once, then again, before it collapsed in a burst of static. A heartbeat later, the swarm struck the hull. Explosions rippled across the ship's surface until the dreadnought split apart, its burning wreckage tumbling silently into the void. The assembly gasped. Silence filled the hall, broken only by nervous whispers. No one had ever seen a dreadnought fall so quickly. Another admiral shouted, desperate. "That was luck. One ship. The rest will crush them." The other dreadnoughts opened fire, their cannons thundering across the stars. Entire swarms were cut down, but for every fighter destroyed, two more slipped through the storm of fire. They struck again and again, wearing down shields, slicing through armor, breaking weapons. Another dreadnought groaned under the pressure, flames bursting from its side as it tried to retreat. The humans did not let it escape. The swarm tore it apart piece by piece until nothing was left but fragments. Alien commanders shouted orders, their voices breaking with panic. Crews begged for new strategies, but nothing worked. The human craft did not fight like machines. They moved like hunters, unpredictable, relentless, always striking where it hurt the most. Even advanced targeting systems struggled to lock onto them. It was as if the swarm could sense every weakness before it appeared. On the Leviathan's bridge, the human commander stood in silence, watching. His officers reported the destruction of the second dreadnought, the retreat of alien cruisers, the panic across the battlefield. Still, he gave no command to celebrate. His eyes remained calm, his voice steady. "Proceed. This is only a test." That sentence echoed across the channel, sending a chill through every alien officer who heard it. Only a test. To them, this battle was a struggle for survival, a desperate fight to protect their pride and power. To the humans, it was nothing more than practice. The insectoid admiral pounded her claws against her console, her shriek piercing the command net. "Do not retreat. Hold your ground. They are only insects. Crush them." But her words betrayed her fear. Her forces were breaking. Crews reported failing shields, collapsing formations, spreading panic. Even her own officers began to question the fight. "Admiral, they should not fight this way. They are too fast. Too precise. This is not possible." The assembly hall had grown quiet again. No one laughed now. Delegates who had placed bets on Earth's quick defeat sat frozen, their eyes fixed on the screens. Whole civilizations watched in silence, realizing they were seeing something new, something terrifying. The Leviathan's hangars glowed once more. More shapes began to stir within the darkness, larger than fighters, heavier than drones. The galaxy held its breath as the next wave prepared to emerge. If the first swarm could destroy dreadnoughts, what would the second wave do? The battle had turned into a nightmare for the alien fleets. Once proud dreadnoughts now drifted as burning husks, their shattered frames glowing against the dark of space. Cruisers broke formation and tried to flee, only to be hunted down by swarms of human craft that moved with unnatural precision. The Leviathan itself still had not fired a single main weapon. It simply loomed, its massive frame watching over the battle like a silent judge. The galaxy began to realize something chilling. This was not the full strength of Earth. This was only a fraction. News spread like fire through the galactic networks. Every world connected to the Assembly's live broadcast watched in silence as human fighters shredded ships that had once been feared symbols of power. Insectoid broods fell quiet. Reptilian generals who had laughed earlier now sat still, their scales pale with unease. Even distant empires not present in the assembly tuned into the feed, whispering questions to one another. How long had humanity been hiding this strength? How many of these colossal carriers had they built in secret? Inside the assembly hall, the tension was unbearable. Delegates shifted nervously in their seats, their eyes fixed on the burning battlefield. No one dared laugh anymore. No one dared speak loudly. For centuries, humanity had been dismissed as backward, too fragile to matter. Now those same voices trembled at the sight of Earth's silence. The humans in the gallery remained still, their expressions unreadable. They did not smile, did not gloat, did not cheer. They only watched, as if everything unfolding before the galaxy had already been expected. One reptilian general finally broke, his voice cracking as he shouted across the chamber. "This cannot be real. They are primitives. They do not have the resources, the science, the industry. This is impossible." His words echoed across the hall, but no one answered him. Deep down, they all knew the truth. The Leviathan existed. The swarm existed. And dreadnoughts, the pride of countless civilizations, had fallen before them. On the battlefield, the alien admirals were in chaos. Some screamed for retreat, others for reinforcements, but none could agree. Their fleets were too broken, their morale too shattered. The insectoid admiral who had mocked Earth at the start now clutched her mandibles in panic as reports flooded her command deck. Shields failing. Engines destroyed. Fighters breached the hull. She slammed her claws against the console, refusing to give the order she dreaded. But her officers looked at her with wide, fearful eyes. They already knew. The battle was lost. And still, the humans did not chase with madness. They did not shout for blood. The swarm struck with discipline, crippling ships, disabling weapons, breaking fleets apart piece by piece. Their calm made it worse. To the galaxy, this was not the fury of a desperate species. This was control. This was confidence. It was the quiet, terrifying confidence of a predator that knew victory before the fight had even begun. On the Leviathan's bridge, the commander stood in silence. Around him, officers reported more victories, more broken fleets, more retreats. At last, he spoke a single sentence, his voice low, almost like a whisper. "This is only a test run. The words carried across the human fleet and through the intercepted channels of the alien ships. When translated, they spread like poison through the enemy crews. A test run. The galaxy realized with horror that this was not Earth's war. This was practice. In the assembly hall, the words were repeated again and again. Delegates looked at each other in shock. A test run. If this was only one supercarrier, what would a fleet of them do? What was Earth preparing for if not this battle? Who were they preparing to fight? Across distant worlds, fear began to spread. Old enemies of humanity whispered in their halls. Civilizations that had dismissed Earth as harmless now gathered in secret, speaking of alliances, of defenses, of the terrifying possibility that the humans had built more than one Leviathan. Some believed Earth had dozens. Others whispered of entire hidden fleets, waiting in the dark, unseen until the time was right. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy trembled at the thought of a species they had once mocked. Humanity, the so-called primitives, had shown only one ship, and already empires felt small. The assembly fell silent as the Leviathan's hangars began to glow again. Shapes larger than fighters began to move within the darkness. If the first waves could destroy dreadnoughts, what would the next reveal? The battlefield was unrecognizable. Wreckage of once proud alien fleets drifted silently in orbit, burning fragments glowing like dying stars. The few surviving ships had pulled back, their formations shattered, their pride gone. Where the galaxy had expected to see Earth humbled and broken, they instead saw their own strength torn apart by a single ship and its endless swarm. And still, the Leviathan stood untouched, its shields humming quietly, its hangars not yet empty. Inside the assembly hall, the silence was suffocating. Delegates who had mocked Earth earlier now sat rigid in their seats, their voices trapped in their throats. Every eye was locked on the giant display, where the Leviathan's hangars began to open once more. Out of the shadows came shapes larger than the fighters, larger even than the heavy assault craft. Massive war machines drifted into the void, each bristling with weapons the galaxy had never seen before. Their hulls gleamed with human engineering, simple, sharp, efficient. Not graceful, not elegant, but terrifyingly practical. The alien admirals who still had ships left shouted in panic. Fall back! Fall back now! Crews scrambled to obey, retreating in every direction. The swarm did not chase recklessly. It moved like a wall, pressing the fleets back, pinning them in place, striking only when ordered. For every alien ship that tried to escape, human craft cut off their path with precision strikes. There was no escape. The battlefield belonged to Earth. Finally, the insectoid admiral broke, her voice trembling as she screamed into the channel. Humans, enough. You have made your point. Call off your machines. We yield. Her mandibles clattered nervously as she forced out the words she had never thought her kind would say to Earth. Around her, other admirals sent desperate signals of surrender, begging for a ceasefire, pleading for mercy. The human swarm froze in place. The massive carrier went silent again, its hangars closing one by one. For a long moment, the battlefield was still, as if the humans were deciding whether to answer. The galaxy held its breath. Then the voice of the human commander came across the channel, calm and steady, not raised in anger, not heavy with pride. It was the same voice that had spoken at the beginning. You mocked Earth's fleet. You called us weak. You laughed at our silence. Today you saw only one ship. This was not an army. This was not our fleet. This was only the Leviathan. The words struck harder than any weapon. The alien fleets, already broken, realized the truth in those words. One ship had destroyed them. One ship had brought the galaxy to its knees. If Earth had built one Leviathan, how many more waited in the dark? The commanders in the assembly whispered to themselves, fear written across their faces. The human commander's voice returned, softer this time, but no less powerful. Do not mistake this for conquest. We did not come here to rule you. We came here to answer your challenge. But know this. Earth does not stand alone anymore. If you come for us again, you will not face one Leviathan. As he spoke, the stars behind the battlefield began to change. Ripples shimmered across the void, and one by one, massive shapes emerged from the darkness. Dozens of colossal carriers uncloaked, their frames as vast as the Leviathan, their engines burning bright. The galaxy stared in disbelief. A fleet of planet killers, waiting in silence, had been watching the entire time. The assembly hall erupted in chaos. Some delegates shouted in terror, others fell into stunned silence. Entire civilizations watching the broadcast went still, their people realizing that Earth had been preparing in secret, building strength not for one battle, but for something far greater. Humanity had not been behind. Humanity had been waiting. The Leviathan drifted forward, its swarm parting to clear its path. The human commander gave his final words, his voice carrying across the battlefield and into the hearts of every species watching. Remember this day. You thought Earth was weak. You thought we were unready. But we are here. And when the true war comes, the galaxy will understand, humanity was never the prey. The transmission ended. The galaxy sat in silence, shaken to its core. Where there had once been laughter and mockery, there was now only fear. Earth had answered, and nothing would ever be the same again.